everyone. We have something special starting today, and it is Summer Sunday School. So this is the video for 3rd to 6th grade. And you might have to stop and think about that for a minute, because now that you're finished with school and it's summertime, you've actually promoted to the next grade. So if you were in 2nd grade last year in school, you are now a 3rd grader. So this is the Sunday school where you should be. If you were a 3rd grader, you're now a 4th grader, 4th grader, 5th grader, 5th grader, 6th grader, and if you were a 6th grader, you are welcome to watch this video, but you technically will be moving on to junior high. So we're happy to have our new 3rd graders with us, and we're sorry to see our old 6th graders go, but you're going to love junior high. Summer Sunday School is going to be a fun time. We are going to be talking about how to serve. Now, when I talk about how to serve, I'm not talking about how to bring somebody a plate of food in a restaurant or take their order. No, not that kind of serve. I'm not talking about taking a volleyball and hitting it really hard over the net. I'm not talking about that kind of serve either. I am talking about doing acts of service for other people, doing things to help others. And today we're specifically going to focus on serving our family. But before we go there, I want to let you know that every week of Summer Sunday School, we're going to have the same Bible verse. And this Bible verse doesn't have the word serve in it, but I still think it's a great verse for us to learn over Summer Sunday School this year. And here's the verse. It's Psalm 25, 4-5. Are you ready? Show me your ways, Lord. Teach me your paths. Guide me in your truth and teach me. For you are God, my Savior, and my hope is in you all day long. So we're going to say that again in just a minute. And I just want you to think about it this week. I want you to think about what that verse might mean. And next week, maybe we can use some fun games and things to learn it a little bit more. But for this week, let's read it again. Psalm 25, 4-5. Show me your ways, Lord. Teach me your paths. Guide me in your truth and teach me. For you are God, my Savior, and my hope is in you all day long. You know, if we want to learn to be able to serve others, we need God to show us the way. God will show us the way. He will teach us his path. He will guide us in truth and teach us. And one of the things we can learn from God and from his word is how to serve others. So like I said before, today we're going to learn about serving family. So where you live with your mom, your dad, your grandparents, your brothers and sisters, we are going to learn how to serve. And the Bible story that we're going to use for that today is the story of Joseph. And I don't mean Joseph and Mary and the baby Jesus story. No, this is the Joseph from the Old Testament. And most of you have heard this story, and it will be familiar to you. It is a long story. So I'm going to go through it very quickly. But if you would like to go back with your family and read the story of Joseph, you will find it in Genesis chapters 37-45. Okay, so here we go. Back in the beginning of Genesis 37, we have learned about Jacob. We had Abraham, who had Isaac, who had Jacob. And Jacob had 12 sons. And Joseph is the 10th son. So that means that Joseph is the 11th son. So that means that Joseph had 10 brothers older than him and 1 brother younger than him. Joseph was 11th son. Now, the thing about Joseph is, out of all of those sons, Jacob decided that Joseph was his favorite. There's reasons for that you can read about. But Joseph was Jacob's favorite. And Jacob showed that by giving Joseph a very fancy coat of many colors. Now, I don't have very many colors on my coat, but a very fancy coat of many colors that Joseph would wear around and kind of show off a little bit to his older brothers, because nobody else got a coat like Joseph. Joseph was the only one. Joseph also would have dreams. Joseph would have dreams of bales of straw and grain bowing down, and stars and bowing down, and they all seemed to represent to Joseph that it was his brothers all bowing down to him. Joseph would tell his brothers these dreams, and it would make them so mad. They got to the point that they were so jealous of Joseph for being their father's favorite, for having these dreams, for thinking he was better than they were. They were so jealous, they actually started to hate Joseph. So one day when Joseph went out to check on them, as they saw Joseph coming toward them, they made a plan. They made a plan to kill Joseph. That's how much they disliked him. But the older brother didn't want Joseph to be killed. So he said, let's throw him in this pit instead, this dry hole, this well. Let's throw him in there and leave him. And then what the older brother had thought is, later when they're all gone, I can come back and get him. And so they did. They threw Joseph in the pit. But before they could get him out, before the older brother could come back, some slave traders came along the road. A big caravan of camels and people came traveling along the road on their way to Egypt. And they would buy people and then sell them in Egypt. And the brothers decided that this was the idea that they would do. They would sell Joseph to the slave traders, and he would be gone to Egypt, and they would never have to see him again. And that's exactly what they did. And Joseph was sold into Egypt. He was betrayed by his brothers. He was sold. He was taken away from his family, from his home, from his parents. He was taken away. When he got to Egypt, he became a slave. He served as a slave, and he was a very good slave to his master. His master respected him very much and gave him lots of duties in the house. He favored Joseph. He liked him. But Joseph was falsely accused of something in the house and was thrown into prison. So first sold by his brothers, then a slave, falsely accused, put into prison, spent many years in prison. Finally, he had the opportunity to get out of prison because he was able to tell what the dreams meant of two of the other prisoners who served the Pharaoh. A Pharaoh in Egypt is like a king, the highest ruler in the land. And Pharaoh had had dreams, and he wanted those dreams interpreted. Now again, if you want to know more about those dreams, go and read in Genesis 37 to 45 is where we are. So Joseph was able to tell the Pharaoh what the dreams meant. That's how he got out of prison. He was able to tell the Pharaoh what the dreams meant. The Pharaoh came to really like Joseph. It seemed that everywhere Joseph went, as a slave, in prison, and now with the Pharaoh, everybody liked him. Joseph worked hard. Joseph did a good job. Joseph served well. And God was with Joseph in whatever he did, even when it was hard. So Joseph now is serving the Pharaoh. And the Pharaoh came to like Joseph so much and respect him so much, and Joseph did such a good job that Joseph was made the second in command of Egypt. The only person that was higher than him was the Pharaoh. Now, about this time, a famine came to the land. Now, that was one of the dreams that Joseph had been able to interpret. So they knew that this famine was coming. And Joseph had started planning ahead by storing up grain and food, because grain becomes bread, in big storage containers. So Egypt was able to prepare for the famine. A famine comes in when there's a lack of water and the animals can't eat. And when the animals can't eat and they starve, then the people starve too. So there was this famine in the land and people were going to starve. But because Joseph had interpreted the Pharaoh's dream about the famine, they had been able to prepare. And not only was Egypt able to eat, but other groups of people from around the land, other countries and other groupings of people were able to travel to Egypt and ask to buy the grain from Egypt. One day, as Joseph was sitting in his chair and he was selling the grain to people, he noticed a group of men coming toward him to buy some grain. And who do you think those men were? That's right, they were his older brothers. Joseph recognized them immediately. But do you think they recognized Joseph? They didn't. Because many years had passed, and Joseph, who was only a teenage boy when they had sold him away, had grown up. He was a man. So they had never seen Joseph as a man. Not only that, but Joseph had lived in Egypt for many years, and he now dressed like an Egyptian and did his hair like an Egyptian, and he was very rich and very powerful, and they never would have thought that their young little brother that they had sold off as a slave would be a powerful ruler of Egypt. So they didn't recognize Joseph, but Joseph recognized them. Now again, I'm going to skip a lot, so if you want to go back and read the story with your family, you can. But basically what happened is Joseph didn't tell them at first who he was. He kept it a secret, and he tested them a little bit. He tested them to see. He wanted to find out information. He wanted to know, was his father still alive? Was his little brother still alive? He wanted to know, did they remember him? So he didn't tell them right away. You hear my dog? My dog is making noise. I'm sorry. He didn't tell them right away, but eventually he revealed himself. They were in front of him, and he told them. He said, "It's me, your younger brother Joseph, who you sold into slavery." They could hardly believe it. They couldn't believe it, that this was Joseph. And when they saw him and they realized who he was, they fell down in fear, because Joseph was this powerful person, and they were afraid that he would be so angry that he would put them all to death or put them all in prison. They didn't know what he would do. And Joseph realized right then in that moment that he had power over these brothers who had betrayed him, who had treated him so hatefully. But in that moment, Joseph decided to forgive. Joseph forgave his brothers for their betrayal, for their hate, for selling him away, for taking the years of his life. He forgave them. Do you know what Joseph told his brothers? He told them, "You meant this for evil, but God used this for good." God used all of this to help Jacob's family eat in the famine. Because Joseph was where he was in that moment, he was able to help his family survive the famine. And he even moved his family to be closer to him, and they were together again. Now that doesn't take away the bad things that they did to Joseph. But Joseph forgave. He chose to forgive. And God used that situation. God used that situation in Joseph's life. We're talking about serving. And how is it that Joseph served his family? How is that? He served his family because he used his abilities. He used what he had. He used his position as a powerful person. He used his abilities. He used the gifts that God had given him, gifts to interpret dreams, gifts to work hard and to be good at his job, gifts to be respectful, gifts to plan ahead and be smart. All of these gifts that God had given him, he used those to benefit others. And that's how Joseph served his family. So, how can you serve your family? Do you have gifts that God has given you? Do you have abilities? Do you have talents? Do you have a position? Maybe you're the older sibling. You can have ways that you serve your family as the older sibling. You can do things that your little brothers and sisters can't do. Most of you in this Sunday school class can do things. 3rd to 6th grade, you can do things that the littler kids might not be able to do. They might not be able to help with as many projects or as many chores or as many good, helpful things in your family as the littler ones. You can use your position and your age. You can use the things that you know and the things that you have to serve. You can help your family by using the talents and the abilities and the skills and the position that you have to do to your family what you would want them to do to you, to serve them. So I hope you'll check out the email, and you'll see on the email some special worksheets all about Joseph, some fun things, maybe a coloring page, crossword puzzle, something like that about Joseph. You can do those. And if you want to read the whole story, go to Genesis chapter 37, 45. You can read more about Joseph, fill in the blanks a little bit. But it was good to see you, good to talk to you, and I'll see you next time.